Hello and welcome back to the workshop, where today we're joined by Steve Purves from Accurascale and a fantastic collection of pannier samples. Now, things have moved on quite nice since the last time we saw these, because they've now got colour as well, Steve.
Yes, they have. Quite a bit of work's gone into producing the artworks for these, as you can imagine, because we've not just got with different flavours of Great Western, different flavours of British Railways, and obviously the slightly more colourful ones at the back as well. So,
of course, so take us back to the start of the project. So which versions of the panniers are you actually making models of?
Pretty much all of them. So when we talk about panniers, the first thought goes to 5700s. So we start at the 5700 story in 1929, Swindon products, and then all the way through to the last built BR Western Region 8750s. But also in the tooling, we've got the variations for the 6700s, which were the non-vacuum braked versions, and the 6750s, which were a continuation of the 6700s, but with an 8750 style cab. So it's all the popular ones.
Yes, so there's a lot of complications obviously in the tooling suite. So how do you go about creating such a complex suite of tools?
It's one of those where you start with, let's make everything, and which ones, if we want to do this one, that one, you know from the get-go which ones you want to do. So, for example, London Transport, we knew as soon as the project started, London Transport was going to be a key model for us. And then you kind of work back. So, well, if we do this version, this gives us a top feed, this one gives us the one without top feed. And in the end, you end up making everything anyway. So, but yeah, you start with an open book and catalogue everything.
Yeah.
And so I always say to people when we talk about research, the amount of research we do, we actually spend more time researching the ones that we don't make, because you've got to research it to know that you're not going to make it.
Yeah. And then in terms of this model, then obviously it was announced, it was in November last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You actually announced the tooling for them. So we've seen the first engineering samples which you launched with, but have there been many changes along the way since those first samples?
Little bits. So tooling-wise, they were actually quite good from the get-go. Electronics-wise, we kind of pushed the factory to get a move on so we could have them to launch at Worley. And when we did that, they got all the tooling done, but not necessarily the electronics. So that's kind of been an ongoing thing, especially with developing the speakers. So these have now got a twin speaker set up in there, and we're just waiting for the final modifications to that. So they're very close, both in colour now and mechanical side of things.
Yes, in terms of that electrical specification, though, from our conversation, I know you're pushing the boundaries of what you're trying to do with these, but what's actually going to be in both the DCC ready and the DCC sound versions of these? So,
like most of our products now, everything comes with speakers fitted, so it'll come pre-fitted with a twin speaker. It's a Next 18 decoder socket, which is accessed through the smokebox door, which is magnetic removable. These are a bit awkward at the moment because you can't get into the smoke. The guides for the PCB aren't in there, but you'll just be able to slot in the PCB. And they've got stay alive, they've got all-wheel pickup, they've got drive to centre axle. You know, it's everything that you come to expect with a modern tank locomotive, fully detailed cab interior with the illuminated firebox. So yeah, it's got the package.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see you putting the stay alive into them as well, because that's not something we're seeing much of in the smaller size locos yet. There's tended to be, we're seeing the big locos like your big diesels and things, but we're not seeing much of that in the small locos.
No, and it's, to be honest, I think there's a trade-off to be had, because there are almost two camps, and this will be the way that you'd speak to other people or other designers, engineers. With a small engine, you need the weight. You need the weight for the traction, you need the weight for pickup, reliable pickup and contact. But by putting stay alives in there, you have to remove the weight. So the stay alives help in one respect, but also hinder in another. But this one, we've managed to get enough weight in there, I think, as well. So it's a bit of a balancing act. But yeah, you're right. For the smaller locos, it's a bit more.
Well, it's actually, it can be more tricky, but also actually should have more payback for the customer as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the smaller stay alive components are getting smaller and smaller as well. So you can actually get more stay alive in a smaller device than you used to do a few years ago.
Yeah, I personally, with these running, I think it's invaluable. You know, it's certainly when you come down to shunting locos, they're going to be spending a lot of time over point work and and slow speed. So the stay alive it's a no-brainer almost.
Exactly. There's nothing more frustrating than that stalling in the middle of a point, is there? So,
and if you've got sound on as well, it just completely destroys the experience. So it's worth its weight, literally.
Yeah. And are you sticking with ESU for the sound decoders?
Yeah, so these are ESU decoders in there. Again, not fully configured yet. We're still working on the sound file, but we're hoping that they'll all be ready and done. We've got a couple of options with sound, so it's going to be hopefully quite an immersive experience, with everything on.
Fantastic. And then, obviously, like I say, we've got new decorated samples here, and this is the first colour samples, aren't they? So they've still got to have revisions made before these actually go into production.
Yeah, there's probably one that stands out a little more than the others on there, which is the GWR green one, which, hold my hands up, that was a typo. And I pressed one key and it should have been the other, and that's come through at a different shade of green. So that will be revised to match the other greens, which is, again, the proper shade of BR green. Yeah. But there are little tweaks to do. This is the stage where we now go through it with a magnifying glass and make sure the fit and finish and everything else is right.
Yeah. And in terms of those liveries, though, can you just talk us through the different periods they cover as well?
Yeah, so easily we'll go through the whole lot. So if you look right down at the far end, you've got 57-54 and 67-43, which are the two great Western lettered panniers. So both of these are very early in the story, sort of late 1920s, early 1930s. 57-54 is a product of Swindon, so it's got the cast number plates, whereas 67-43, I can't think who made that one now, it might be a North British one, and that's got the brass number plates. But there's other subtle differences, such as the riveted tanks. 6700's obviously not got the braking equipment on there. Moving forward in time, you've got the shirt button monogram livery on 77.
55.
55. Yeah. Signal in the way. Yeah. So that one's there. That's slightly more further forward in time, so that's firmly in the 1930s. And then you've got the slightly later 57-41, which is the GWR lettered, so that takes you right up to British Railways.
Yeah, and that's the one that's got to have the colour crest, isn't it? Yeah.
We're going to tone that down a little bit, because it's a bit too duck at the moment.
Yeah. So was there actually a difference in the shade then between the previous three and that GWR lettered one?
No, there shouldn't have been. No, only on my artwork where I pressed the wrong button.
They also finished that line then with the British Railways lettered one, which is essentially Great Western Green, isn't it? But with British Railways.
It's even got the Egyptian typeface, so it's the full lettered version. But this is the first time that you're seeing the 8750 style features.
Yeah.
So it's got the 8750 cab with the taller roof and rounded corners. But you've still retained, because it's quite an early one, you've still got the original style water fillers, for example. So there's all sorts of details that will change between them, and different routes for the injector overflow pipes, for example, and different steps on the front of the tanks. There's a lot to sort of play spot the difference with.
Indeed, and then we move forward to the British Railways here and start off with the classic early crest on the plain black livery.
Yeah, and the red plates that just set it off. We've chosen 7714 not only because it carries those red plates and it's got the early crest, but it's also a well-known preserved locomotive. Again, moving back into the BR's period, you've got the early crest with the line black, which was these were used as empty coaching stock movements into Paddington, but that's on an 8750 again. And then another 8750 in the plain late crest black, which is 9681, another preserved engine.
Yeah, and then the lime green of 7754 was Llangollen last time I checked, but it was Mountain Ash collieries, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, so 7754, it had, everyone knows it as, that was the NCB one, but when you start looking into the actually reproducing the livery of it, it was at another colliery first, then it became famous at Mountain Ash, but it was originally a darker green and it didn't have the lettering on the side, and there was quite a few little subtle differences between the two, so we've chosen obviously the version that people know the best. But that again, subtle differences, that's not got a toolbox fitted, so we had to do a new running plate for that, so we haven't got the toolbox fitted to the chassis. And then moving forward again, we've got the London Transport ones, which we've just announced.
So they've literally just been announced, haven't they?
Yeah. And again, it's not necessarily a pair of London Transport locos. We've done it slightly different in that we've got one genuine London Transport locomotive in L91, which has got the tripcock gear fitted. It's got the full London Transport livery as it was in service. But then we've got L94, which is representing the period that it was running on the main lines under Tyseley and vintage trains. So it's got the modern warning flashes on it. It's still got the London Transport cab, but it hasn't got the London Transport tripcock gear. But it has got additional boxes on the underframe for the electrical equipment and the speedometer.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a bit of a variation there.
Yes, there really is a myriad of different parts being fitted across all these different liveries.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the tooling, the early ones didn't have the steps on the side of the bunker. So they've got a different bunker moulding for the really early ones. They also had an internal handrail on the front of the cab side, so they've got a totally different cab area. Moving forward, you've got the ones obviously without the top feed. The later models have got the top feed. Again, a difference between the two London Transport ones. Different water fillers on the top of the tanks. There's different styles of step on the front of the saddle tank, pannier tanks. Yeah. We're talking about pannier tanks. Yeah. But yeah, even the injector overflow was originally routed through the running plate, whereas on the later ones they went down the running plate and down the outside and tucked under the step. So there's enough to keep you. If you buy more than one, I mean, if you're lucky enough to afford many of these, then that's something that you can appreciate and enjoy between different models.
And talking of which, that brings us to the two most important questions of every model we ever see, which is how much are they and when are they due to arrive?
So the DCC ready versions are $139.95 and the DCC sound ones are $239.95, and they will be available in the early part of next year.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to see this latest selection of livery samples, and obviously you've got more work to do to finish all these. We're looking forward to seeing the fully finished product, which is not really that far away, is it? So.
No, it's not. It's breathing down my neck already.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much today for watching this latest video about Accurascale's new pannier locomotives for double O gauge. We hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to seeing you next time.